Welcome to the Synergy Sisters podcast with hosts Debbie Prediger and Mary Gervais, two super connectors at heart who love building powerful relationships with visionaries and thought leaders. We act as a focal gathering point for people, ideas, dreams, and enterprises. We know that collaborations, connections, and trusted real relationships unfold naturally as you tune into your intuition. What is your heart whispering? We love to explore the big, audacious dreams of heart-centered entrepreneurs as they step into their leadership roles. We love weaving business and marketing strategy with spiritual development, energetics, and growth mindset.
Hello, everybody, and welcome to our episode of Light. And some of you hear us talk about light, but I'm going to go a little bit further. Light stands for luminous intuition, guidance, harmony, and transformation. So all of our conversations, we bring a little light into. And we are so excited, my co-host Debbie Prediger and I, today to be speaking to Karen Hall. She is the Queen of Empathy. She is the executive producer of the Los Angeles Tribune, and she is also host to a globally top-rated podcast, The Hero Within. So with that, I'm going to hand it over to Debbie. She will probably speak a little bit more about our incredible guest, Karen, and then we will start with Karen.
Thank you so much, Mary. I always like to bring a little piece into it of how we know our guests. And Karen is somebody that I am very, very blessed to get to know. She is the executive producer of the Los Angeles Tribune Women's Journal, which I am a part of. And she hosts many opportunities for us to speak as a panel or to share our thoughts as a thought leader. And I absolutely love and adore her message and her purpose in the world. And that includes her personal podcast. So, Karen, thank you for joining us today. I always like to start this entire thing with asking a question. If you were introducing yourself without titles, without any of the degrees that you have, but just letting people understand who you are from a heart level, how would you share your heart with us?
Oh, thank you, Debbie. And thank you, Mary, for welcoming me. And I'm so grateful to be on your podcast. I love how you are spreading light. We need more light in this world. And so great job on your mission and what you were doing with your podcast. I would introduce myself if I was just really on a heart level with you and you wanted to know who am I would tell you that I am a being of love. And that is a mantra that I use that I remember reading the book Return to Love by Marianne Williamson, and it made such a difference in my life. I had studied the scriptures a lot, but when Marianne Williamson said it the way that she did, it just changed things for me. I had a massive paradigm shift. And when I can remember that about myself, I act differently. And when I can remember that about you, that you are a being of love, then I treat you differently too. So that's how I would, at the core of who I am, that is who I am. And I think it's really important that we all remember our divine identity because it changes how we think, it changes how we feel, it changes how we behave.
Wow. I love this, where this conversation is going. You guys can tell that we go deep really quickly, and our guests are able to do that. So, Karen, you are the queen of empathy, and you have other gifts and talents. But as the queen of empathy, I would love to hear where that came from, how you claimed that as your own, and how you use it for good in the world.
Thank you. Well, first of all, I was dubbed that name. And at first I didn't use that name because it felt too, I don't know, it just felt like it was too grand, but people kept saying it to me, and they're like, you're like the queen of empathy. And and so finally somebody was asking me to just to describe myself in a metaphor kind of thing. And I said, well, they said, what do people say about you? Because I was having trouble, narrowing it down. And I said, well, I hear this a lot. And they said, oh my gosh, you should use that as your little moniker. And I'm like, okay, well, I guess I will, because I do hear that a lot. And where that came from is likely because I have struggled a lot. I have gone through a lot of adversity. It began at birth. I was born 2.5 months premature, and I weighed 1 pound, 13 ounces shortly after birth. So if you can imagine, I was less than the size of a grapefruit. And in those days, they didn't have all the technology that they do now. And they told my parents that I would not live. And my parents were just so scared. And I did survive the night. I kept, they're like, oh my gosh, she's still alive. And then they said, well, even if she continues to live, she will be a vegetable. But by the grace of God, I'm not. And so I've had many miracles in my life, but that 2.5 months in the incubator by myself, my mother couldn't hold me. She couldn't touch me. She couldn't feed me or nurse me or anything. I didn't have any contact with her. And to be ripped away from your mother, and the only lullaby you hear, and you don't have her heartbeat, you just have these beeps and hums of this mechanical world. And so I had anxiety as a child. I still have anxiety, but I had a lot of fears. I think the world just didn't feel very safe to me, probably because I didn't have that connection with my mother. I also have a very high need for connection. I love to connect with people. And so that's just extremely important. Relationships are the most important thing to me besides the Lord. And so as I worked through those fears, I learned a lot of things. I learned a lot of things about myself, and I realized that other people had fears. And so my mother worked really hard with me to help me. She read me the book, The Little Engine That Could. That was my bedtime story. And that was my first mindset lesson. My mom was a life coach and I didn't even know it, but she was teaching me about mindset. And so for those of you who don't know, The Little Engine That Could, it's a little blue engine, and it's small, and the big engines broke down and couldn't take the train full of toys and dolls and good things to eat over the mountain. So a passenger train comes along. No, it's too busy. That, a steam locomotive comes along. No, it's too important. All these other trains won't help. But the little engine that could says, I'll help. And that is me. I'm always like, I'll help. How can I help? The other name people give me is Little Miss Helpful. Because I love to help people. And so I should put that as my moniker. But anyway, that was my mantra. And my mom would say, when I was scared to do things, she would say, just say, I think I can, I think I can, I think I can, and be like the little engine that could. And I did. And then when I would accomplish the thing, I would say, I thought I could, I thought I could. And I would celebrate that I did it. And so even to this day, when I have scary things to do, when I'm getting on stage and I'm speaking, I'll say, I think I can, I think I can, because I still get scared and I still have to work on overcoming those fears. I'm a lot better than I used to be. I used to be afraid to ride my bike to school by myself. I mean, I just had a lot of fears. And so then as other adversities came up in my life, and I was like, why are people acting like that way? I always ask my mom and dad that question. Why would they do that thing? And my mom said to me, they wouldn't do that if they were happy. If they felt happy, they wouldn't act like that. And I was like, oh my gosh, that's so true. When I feel love in my heart, I don't want to hurt anybody. I don't want to say anything that's going to be unkind or unloving. And so that was a massive lesson for me. And sometimes it was hard to grasp, because I'm like, they look really happy, but that's so true. People just don't act that way if they are truly happy. And so as I went through the different types of adversity, I learned forgiveness. I learned to love even when someone wasn't happy, and to recognize that there was an unmet need there, and that I could help show that love to that person even if they weren't feeling loving. And so that was where my empathy developed, was trying to really look at what was going on in that person. What was that unmet need? And also having empathy for myself. I had to really learn that skill. That was secondary. First, I learned to have empathy for them, and then I learned to have empathy for myself. And I realized, oh, it's really the other way around. I really have to work on having empathy for myself first. And so I worked on that also as a little girl. I was a very spiritual person. My mom and dad were not spiritual. We didn't go to church. We didn't have any religion in the home. My dad was an atheist. My mom was agnostic, but they were truth seekers. They loved truth, and they were always learning and growing. And so I had that in me, and I was always searching, and I love to learn, and I'm so curious. But I was very spiritual. I was always talking to God about everything. I don't know how I learned to pray, but somehow I did. And I had a Bible. I mean, somebody gave me a Bible, and I would read my Bible, and I got answers to prayers when I would read the scriptures. And so that was another element that was really important. But because I felt so different than my family, I would talk to myself, and I would talk in the mirror. And I would say, I love you. I'm sorry you feel lonely. And I didn't know that I was having self-empathy at that time, but I was nurturing the unmet needs in myself by doing mirror work. And I giggle at myself that I did that as a little girl, but I continued doing it. And now we know that that's actually a really effective tool.
Wow. Karen, that, that is incredible, really. And as you're speaking, I had so many things come through. And I mean, and I don't know if anyone has ever told you, but I have read a study that children who are premature have a higher IQ generally than other humans. So, I mean, there are some studies on that. So, even though you say that I know that you were by yourself in the incubator, I also, as you said that, I felt the energy of your mom. She was there, and that energy was still flowing into you. Like the whole time you were telling that, I'm like, and your mama's energy. I just saw the light going in. So, so beautiful. The other thing is I picked up. So you at a young age were inquisitive, and that is, you ask questions. You wanted to know the truth. What made things tick? Why did things happen that way? And then you had the love of your home. And so that all brought it out. But that is what led you to that empathy and that ability to hold others. And I just feel that you have a deep connection with others because it's that inquisitiveness. You go, I want to know what makes you tick. And what a beautiful gift. So you have taken this journey, and I know currently, when we introduced you, we said that you're the executive producer of the Los Angeles Tribune. So, would you tell us a little bit about the work that you are doing and how you are connecting others and sharing their stories?
Oh, it is such a miracle that the Los Angeles Tribune contacted me, because I didn't reach out to them. They reached out to me after they had listened to my podcast. And my podcast is very similar to yours. I have people come on that are telling their stories of overcoming. And the reason I chose the name The Hero Within is because I believe we all have a hero within. And so when the Los Angeles Tribune listened to my podcast, they asked me to be the managing director of the Women's Journal. And then that moved into also the Spanish Journal. And then they said, would you like to produce events? And I'm like, well, sure, let's go. And so I started hosting, and then I started, I was speaking at events, then I was hosting, and then I was co-producing. And then they asked me, do you want to be the executive producer of an event? And I'm like, well, absolutely, let's go. I don't even know how to be an executive producer, but let's figure it out. And the thing that has been so amazing is with these opportunities, I am able to, one, provide a platform where people that want to share their light can now a way to have a voice and to share that voice. And the amazing thing is the reach. At one of our recent events, we had a view of 1.9 million viewers and growing. It just keeps growing. And so for me to be able to have the opportunity for people to share their light in that kind of a global setting across the world, to reach so many people, I feel so blessed to be able to do that. So oftentimes I get to be the host and interview people, like I've got to interview Debbie, and sometimes I get to be the speaker and someone interviews me, but I always get to help make the whole thing possible. And so I just feel so blessed that I get to be a part of that and to shed more light in the world. So it's a miracle. It's really a miracle, because that's not like, I don't feel like I'm really skilled in technology, and yet I'm just learning. And because I'm curious, I do ask questions, and thankfully the Lord magnifies my brain and I learn things.
Well, we learn things, but I also believe that as God puts us in a place and we say yes to it, that we're actually remembering some of the gifts and the skill sets we have. And so I believe in my heart that when we say yes, we're entering into a partnership of the impossible being possible. And what you just shared with us was, it is a miracle. And I want our viewers to actually understand that it's not just being in the right place at the right time. There is more to it. And so I want to back up a little bit with how that came to you, because as a child and being inquisitive and really speaking to God and seeking the answers directly from source, like let's go right to the source instead of the outside world telling us what the answers are, you became this conduit for and being the bridge for others to be able to see that this is possible as well. Now, in today's world, we call that intuition. But I believe that you know that it's even deeper than intuition. Can you help us understand the difference between those two?
Yes, I totally believe that. I believe we all came with light. I believe that we all have a purpose for being here. And as we're going through life, I think most of us ask that question at one time or another. What is my purpose? Why am I here? And what gifts do I have? We want to know what our gifts are and how we can use those. And I think that the Lord gave us these desires within us that guide us. And so, interestingly enough, I admired people that could speak in public. I was terrified. I did not want, no way, give me the microphone. I mean, absolutely. I was scared to death. And if I did have to speak, like at school, I would get so scared. I would shake, I'd lose my voice. I'd turn bright red. It was just terrible. And so, but I admired people that spoke. And my mom said, why don't you take a drama class? And I'm like, are you kidding? That's the last thing I want to do is get on stage. And she's like, I think you should. And so anyway, there was a process that I went through, but that desire never went away. I always wanted to have the opportunity, and I wished that I could speak. I admired people that could, and I wished I could do it. But I believe that desire didn't go away because that came with me. I believe that was a desire that God gave me as a little seed. And because I kept nurturing that seed, then I actually did start speaking. And so I feel that was like, we recognize that and call that intuition, but I believe that we probably don't call it the right name. I think that intuition is the feeling, but I think it's really communication with the divine in some way. I think it's either that message that we got before we came to earth or something. I don't know exactly how I would describe that, but I feel like there is a conduit to the divine that we are tapping into, that we call intuition because that's what we feel, but it's really tapping into that divine. And people have different ways of describing it. I describe it as the spirit. I describe it as the Lord, talking to me and guiding me and revealing things to me. I feel like I have angels and guides that help me from the other side. And so I think that a lot of times we call that intuition. My dad has passed away. I feel him near me, and I hear him whisper things to me. And so people could call that intuition. They might not know where that thought is coming from, but I feel like it's all divine. And so I love that you focus on intuition, because so many times we are told, oh, that's just coincidence. And I was told that as a child. I would run to my mom and tell her, guess what? The Lord told me, blah, blah, blah. And she'd say, that was just a coincidence. And I would say, no, it's not. And she would say, yes, that was just coincidence. And I'd say, no, I prayed and I asked and the Lord told me. And she would be like, no. But it was so strong within me that even as this very shy, meek, compliant, people-pleasing child, I defied her and said, no, it's not coincidence. And I was baffled. I was like, why would she call that coincidence when it was so divine and it was so miraculous to me? And I was so excited. And so I would tell anybody about it, but there weren't very many people that believed me. And so I think that that's another thing that many times we get those thoughts squashed out of us. No, it's coincidence. And then we think, oh, we doubt ourselves. We doubt that intuition that is within us. And we think, oh, I must have been wrong. But most of the time we are right. And so if we follow that, where our heart is leading us, we usually, I call it a breadcrumb trail. It's like one little step into the dark. And then what do I do next? Oh, there's the breadcrumb. Okay, there I go. And the Lord will lead us. And as we keep asking him for help, he'll keep sending that help.
Wow. Karen, wow, we could go on for hours here.
Oh,
So I agree with you. Intuition, for me, I call it the whispers of the heart. It's just those little things that are coming into you. But what I find so fascinating with you is your connection to spirituality, and that you were so cognizant of it as a small, small child, because spirituality can help us feel connected to everything. And of course, it helps us, care more and have that kindness. So I am positive that that is where that empathy just so oozed out of you at a young age. Um, and it was like you were nurturing that seed always. So how is it that you, am I going to put this? Um, what, because you were not really brought up in a with religion in the household, how is it that you have continued as you've gotten older? Are there any certain practices or anything that you do on a daily basis to help you continue with that spirituality, that connection? I mean, like you say, you connect with your dad, which I think is so beautiful when we have a loved one that passes and we can connect, because I do that also with my father. But
oh.
what is it that you do to just keep that mindfulness going throughout the day?
Well, you asked two questions, and I want to answer the first one because people ask me this a lot. How did you become so spiritual in a home that didn't teach you those things? And so I wanted to tell you a really interesting experience that I had. So when I was about 9 years old, and I was trying to decide what to wear. I couldn't decide, should I wear the plaid skirt or the pink dress? It was just like, I was just worried. I had anxiety. And so I was praying and praying and asking for help to decide. I don't know where I got the idea that the Lord would tell me what to wear, but I did. I asked him for help all the time to make decisions. Well, I wasn't getting an answer this time, and it wasn't clear to me, and I didn't feel like one way was right or the other way. So I thought, and I don't know where I got this idea, but I thought, I'll just go to the Bible. So I closed my eyes, I stuck my finger in, and I asked the Lord to speak to me in the Bible. So I opened it up and I read the verse, and it said, why do you worry about what to wear? And I was like, oh my gosh. And it said, don't worry about these things. I clothe the lilies of the field. I care for the sparrow, and all, I can't really quote it right at the moment, but that verse was so powerful. It was like a thunderbolt from heaven. First of all, you don't need to worry. You don't even need to worry about what to wear because I am going to take care of you. I am here for you. And the other message was, I know you. I know what you're worrying about, and I will help you with your specific things because I'm mindful of you. And oh my gosh, to know that he knew me, he knew my thoughts, he knew what I was thinking, he knew what I was worried about, and he would reassure me. And he has spoken that scripture to me throughout my life. I'll start to worry about, oh no, Is my business, am I doing the right thing in my business? And he's like, that's not your worry. Your worry is to worry about me and being aligned with me. You don't have to worry about that part. And I'm like, oh yeah. Thank you. Thank you for reminding me. That's not my worry. That's not the question that I need to be asking. The question is, how can I serve you today, Lord? Who needs me? And how can I use my gifts? And that's the question I wake up with. And I ask him, please let me know today how I can share light, and who can I lift today? And so my practice, that's the start of my day. I start with gratitude that I'm awake, that I have another day to use my gifts. I thank the Lord for my gifts. I do my mirror work and I tell myself I love myself and what I love about myself, and how I can use those gifts. And then I pray and I ponder and I just think, who is there? Who needs me today? And then I start connecting. I start texting people. I start calling people. I start thinking, oh, maybe that person needs a little lift, and I'll send a little quote or whatever. And I read inspirational things in the scriptures or messages and things, and then I go to work and I work to accomplish those goals.
I love what you said. And then I go to work, because as much clarity and alignment and flow that we're looking for, it's in the action that we
Yes.
actually achieve. So I believe that miracles are the opportunities that come to us, but without the action, we're kind of missing out a piece of that equation. So
Absolutely. And I get the revelation as I work. A lot of times I'm taking the steps, like I said, the breadcrumb trail. I don't really know exactly how I'm going to use my gift in yet, but as I start working, then things come to me. And I think work is a very important part. Acting in faith is
Mm.
strengthens our faith, and it shows the Lord that we are it takes faith to act. And it takes faith to act with that intention, and believing that we are going to receive that divine guidance, and that intuition that's going to give us the thought that's going to move us to that action too. So I
Mm.
think powerful acting.
Thank you for that. So I really also believe that in breadcrumbs, when you said that, it was like, that's exactly what I am. I don't need to have the whole roll figured out. I just need the next breadcrumb. And that
Yeah.
curiosity, I believe, that has been planted in us as truth seekers, as people that are really here to partner with the divine. And so, as you said, your ritual is getting close to him, having conversation with him, getting inquisitive. The breadcrumb starts, and then all of a sudden miracles start to happen. New people show up in your life, they ask questions, you get on a certain podcast. Let me feel what that feels like in your day as you see these miracles unfold in front of you, and then what type of gratitude, or so that you're not stopping the flow halfway through, so that you know that this is another breadcrumb and another one's coming right after it.
Well, I have to admit that sometimes the flow does stop.
Okay.
Because in all honesty, sometimes I encounter opposition. Sometimes I encounter, an obstacle. Sometimes I encounter an interaction with somebody that is not as loving as I would hope it would be. And those things stop me in my track. And I have to go back and remember my purpose, and remember, like if I'm dealing with somebody that is acting in an unloving way, I have to remember, oh, what's the unmet need there? What is going on there? I have to go back, and I have to validate myself, and I have to have empathy for myself. Ooh, that was challenging right there. That hurt, and maybe I feel some judgment, and then I have to work on myself, and I have to say, okay, let's release that judgment. I don't know the whole story, and I pray and I ask the Lord to help me to get back to thinking about this person the way he does, and seeing the person the way he does. I ask for that a lot. And then when I can get back to feeling loving feelings, and then sometimes I have to forgive, and then sometimes I have to forgive myself for having judgment. And then I have to go back through all of those steps of emotional intelligence, and getting back to love. And then I get back to, okay, what am I supposed to be doing here? Why am I here today? And then I look for that breadcrumb, and I think, okay, who can I serve? Who can I lift? I ask those questions again. So it's not I honestly, I don't stay in flow the whole day. I have bumps and, ebbs and flows. It kind of goes like this. Some days are like, whoo, and I'm like, wow, that was the most amazing day. And I'm just like so spiritually fed, and I'm like totally on track. And I feel like the little engine that could that's just like, on the way to the mountain. And I think I can, and I thought I could. But some days I'm just like chug, 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 chug. I'm trying to get the engine going, and I'm struggling. Sometimes I struggle with my own anxiety about something, and I have to work through issues with trauma that I've gone through in my life. And I think that to be honest, I think that a lot of times we don't hear those parts of the story. And so when we go through those, we feel very alone. I feel very alone sometimes when I go through those things. And Mary, when you were talking about my mom's energy, when I was in the incubator, you really touched my heart when you said that, because my mom wanted me to live. She was so afraid I was going to die. My grandma, my dad was so excited to have a baby. He was, 30 when I was born. He was just so excited to finally have a baby. My mom was terrified. She felt, a lot more fear. And anyway, but they wanted me. And so I realized that part of my spirituality is because I don't think I was really alone in that incubator. I think God held me in his arms. I think there must have been angels around me for me to live, for me to not have blindness, to not have cerebral palsy, all the things that could have happened to me. I feel like I was divinely cradled in that incubator. And so I feel like that's part of why I have such a spiritual feeling and such a need and a hunger, for spirituality in my life. But that hunger is what drives me to stay in flow, to stay connected to the Lord, to stay connected to people, because I don't like it when there's disconnection. I think I feel pain, when I feel disconnection. And if somebody doesn't feel loving toward me, I have to allow them to feel that. And that's been a journey for me, to allow them to feel how they feel and to accept that and to send them love anyway, and to keep sending them love and allow them in their timetable to recognize the truth that I do care about them, even if they don't think that about me at the moment. And then to recognize that sometimes I even have to set a boundary, and that can be a very loving thing to do for them and for me. And that's a whole different conversation. But sometimes I have to love from afar, and I have to, but releasing that judgment is very important for me so that I can have empathy, because empathy and judgment don't really go together very well. And I prefer the empathy.
Wow. Mm. Karen, I will tell you, when you were talking about the incubator, I had the vision again. There was just golden light surrounding that. I mean, the angelic realm, the divine, you were so protected. So, and I just feel like you are taking that light and it's like with your hands, you're putting it around people. So thank you for continuing sharing that. I do want to swing back though. You were just saying empathy and boundaries. And, I'd love to hear your thoughts on this, because I personally feel that we can say in love yes or no to something. Because
Absolutely.
if that energy is not completely there and it is not a fit, there is nothing wrong with saying no in it, but it's a love no.
Right.
So what is your take on that?
Right. I mean, this has been a challenge for me, because I didn't say no very often, and I still don't say no very often, because most of the time I am Little Miss Helpful, and I always tell the Lord, if you give me the ability to do this, I will do it. And if you want me to do this, I will do it. Now, if you think this isn't aligned, then I'm willing to say no. But even that was scary for me, because I didn't want to have disconnection, and I didn't want someone to not like me or to not love me. And so I do have a much higher capacity than most people. A lot of people tell me, wow, how do you have the stamina to keep listening? Because as a coach, I love to listen. And my husband just laughs. He's like, I don't know how that energizes you. He said, it's just baffling to me that hearing these things and listening. And my dad was a psychologist, and he had a very high stamina for listening. And so I'm sure I learned it from him. But I am energized. And so to say no and to risk having a barrier in that relationship really was scary for me for many years. But then I realized actually it was better for both of us if I set a boundary, if I allowed them to have their space and do what they needed to do. And then it allowed me to come back to love. And that was the most important thing. The boundary was really for me so that I could say, I'm not going to have this conversation if you are going to be escalated. I'm going to allow you to have time to de-escalate, and I'm going to de-escalate myself, because if I don't feel love in my heart, I don't feel like this is a good thing to continue. I need to have a boundary to protect myself and to put a little space in there so that I can connect back with the divine. And sometimes it takes a moment of time. Sometimes it needs space, geographical space. Sometimes it needs, emotional space. But whatever that is that I need to do, however I need to set that boundary, it is to protect my peace and to protect my ability to connect with the divine. And it's to allow me to ground myself and to use that emotional intelligence. And I think it's extremely emotionally intelligent when you notice that your emotions are escalating and you notice that their emotions are escalating. Taking a break is the most powerful thing that you can do, because as I come back to center, as I am able to tap back into the divine and into love again, my emotions de-escalate. And guess what happens when I regulate my emotions? You are able to regulate yours. It's a gift that I give you to regulate my emotions, because we co-regulate. And this was the most amazing, miraculous insight that I ever had, that as I was able to de-escalate, I helped you. And so setting a boundary not only blesses me to be able to come back to love, but I bless you so that you can come back to love. And even if I only think loving thoughts towards you and you're not ready to talk to me, I help you to regulate. And so that's really powerful to me, because it used to feel selfish to set a boundary. It used to feel like, oh, I'm just thinking about me and I don't want you to do that thing. And maybe I often felt like it was a little bit controlling of the other person, and then I realized, no, this is about me. This is about setting a boundary to allow me to emotionally regulate. And then I can send love to them, because I can't really send love when I'm emotionally escalated. I can't really remember things. I'm feeling that anxiety when I get emotionally escalated, and I have to tap back into love to be able to do that. And so one of my favorite mantras is, love is the answer. Now, what was the question? I have little signs in my house, and like where the keys are, where everything is, it says love is the answer. and it always is the answer. And it's even the answer in setting boundaries.
Wow, I love this conversation. We could continue this all day long. But it is very obvious to me that you are being divinely cared for, divinely guided. And as you stay close to that source, you are able to ripple this out into the world. And so you are a blessing to so many, me included. And I would just love for you to have an opportunity to share with the audience of how you serve outside of what we've already talked to and how they can connect with you.
So you can connect with me on LinkedIn. I try to serve with my podcast, because I feel so blessed every time I interview someone on my podcast. I am so uplifted. I love to hear how they have overcome. And every single person, even atheists, talk about spirituality in some way. And so I always feel this beautiful light that comes in as they find hope, as they find healing, as they find their way to overcome. And then I feel a hope that somebody out there that feels alone will connect. And because I have felt so alone in my struggles, that was why I started the podcast, because I didn't want anyone to feel alone and to suffer like I had. And I thought, even if they don't know this person, but they hear their story, they might say, oh, they felt the way I did. Oh, I felt that way too. Oh my gosh, I'm not alone, and I'm not weird for thinking that thing. And it feels connecting to know that you're not the only one that feels that way and thinks that way. And even if the situation is totally different, their experience could be totally different. But to know that we are connected in that way, I think is empowering. And so for me, I know, Debbie, you love to empower women, and Mary, you do too. And so for me, that is how I empower people, is to help them feel connected, to feel the hope that comes from that, and to feel the connection to the divine, and to feel that healing. And I do that in coaching. I do that in speaking and writing, and in sharing my story. I'm writing a book, and I have one published, and I'm writing another one. And I just hope that the person that needs that will be guided to that at that time, and that it will provide that boost and that strength, that breadcrumb for them, that they know that they can keep going, and that there is divine help to provide that power, that empowerment. I mean, for me, I am empowered by the Lord, and he gives me those thoughts. He even blesses my memory to work. I'm always relying on him. Please help me remember that truth. Please help me remember that thing. Please help me remember to even do my tools and things. And so I feel like anytime I remember something, it's by the grace of God. It is honestly by the grace of God that I can remember anything. And so I just pray for people that they will be guided, so that they can receive the help that they need, so that they can feel hope, and then they can return to love.
Wow. Well, Karen, with that, I really, from the bottom of my heart, want to say thank you for sharing your love and your light. And we will just sign off with love and gratitude.
Thank you so much. Thank you so much for having me. It was such an honor, and you brought so much joy to my heart to celebrate these gifts and blessings that I've been given, and how the Lord has helped me through so many things. To share that sweet little moment reading that scripture, just I felt the Spirit again, like, yes, that is your message for your life. Remember that, Karen. So thank you for celebrating with me. Thank you for asking, and thank you for wanting to know about me and about my life, and my journey, and the divine connection that has blessed me so abundantly. Thank you so much.
We've loved connecting with you today, and as always, we sign off with love and light, trusting that each listener knows in their heart they were created for greatness. We can easily see that greatness in you, and we would love to be part of your journey to your highest path of creating and living the life that you love. We'd love to have you join our community of heart-led world changers, visionaries, and thought leaders. Check us out on Facebook, Instagram, and LinkedIn. You can find us on all socials as The Synergy Sisters.
Hey everyone, it's Debbie Prediger, and I am here to say thank you. Thank you for watching or listening, depending on which platform you're on, to our season 2 of the Synergy Sisters Collective Light podcast. And my call to action to you is, do you want to be part of a community that is all about light, all about showing up in this world and collaborating and linking arms? If this sounds like you, and if you'd like to be a guest on our podcast, we want to hear from you. This is Mary Gervais and Debbie Prediger, the Synergy Sisters, that are inviting you into this global collective, and we welcome you.